Yes, just a quick word, if I may, honourable members. I know you've been lobbied on all sorts of things recently, like the 20-mile-an-hour limit and the minimum wage and so on. But I'd like to lobby you on a particular interest of mine, and that is the horse trams and why they're not back where they should be. I've been on the radio with ministers. I've lobbied you by email and conversations. I've had coffee with some of you. I'm on committees that sit where I meet you, and I petitioned Tynwald, and absolutely nothing has happened. So the question now is, just what are you doing about this? Let me just remind you that this is the only original horse tram left in the world, okay? This is a piece of world heritage that you have trashed because it's not back there. Any self-respecting country by now would have put that back and would be celebrating its uniqueness. It's part of our world heritage that we are responsible for. This year is the 150th anniversary of it, and instead of us having people from all around the world taking notice of it and news stories and enthusiasts coming over, we're not going to have anything at all, because all you've left us with is a withered stump of a tramway that finishes barely halfway down the promenade. Now, the thing that really puzzles me is why repeated votes in Tynwald have produced no result at all. The first one was in 2017 when you promised that they would be put back, the tracks, to the sea terminal. And a couple of votes later in 2020, and I've got the details here. The Department of Infrastructure stated that the tram lines would be laid back to the sea terminal during the following winter, and I quote, in line with the express will of Tynwald. Oh yes. And the then Minister for the DOI, the late Tim Baker, actually said, and I quote from Hansard, "I have put it on record a number of times, people will need to take these promises at face value. We will come back and do the work." Oh yes, what an effective promise that is. The thing is, members, I just don't understand your psychology. You vote for something again and again, and absolutely nothing happens. Doesn't that concern you? Why hasn't one of you stood up and said, "Mr. President, we have voted for this, it hasn't happened, why?" And why hasn't any one of you stood up and said, with a motion, "We want these horse trams back, let's do it"? You see, Tynwald is supposed to hold the executive to account, and you simply are not doing that. Why is it that you haven't pushed this? Are you not embarrassed by the votes going nowhere? And, you know, don't tell me, oh, it was the last Tynwald that voted, so it doesn't apply to us, because that would mean that everything you voted for in this Tynwald can be simply disregarded by the next Tynwald. So really, what are you there for? It's just a waste of your time and our money. Oh, and talking of money, of course, that's the other thing you keep saying. Oh, we haven't got the money. We've got to find it. It's not in the budget. There's been no business plan put in. You know, times are tight. Well, look, in recent years, you've spent millions buying the steam packet company. You've loaned millions to buy the new boat. You've spent tens of millions building a ferry terminal in Liverpool. You built a fantastic new sea wall. You've just announced 2 new schools are going to be built. And the Minister for Enterprise has ploughed millions of pounds into developments, helping developers build on our brownfield sites. Look, that's brilliant. Thank goodness we can do it. But you're really expecting us to believe that in 9 years you haven't been able to scrape together the money to put some tracks back along a bit of grass so a horse can pull a tram to the sea terminal? You must think we're stupid. You're not interested, are you? That's it. You just don't care. And if you speak to the Blue Badge guides and the volunteers around the sea terminal in the summer, they of course want the horse trams to come back because the people coming off the cruise ships want to get on them. And before all this truncation was there were 78,000 passengers a year but since you've cut half of it away, it's down to about 45. And I was very interested to hear from a person who was in Dublin recently at the trade fair representing the Isle of Man as to how many Irish people came up to them and said, "Oh, have you put the horse trams back yet?" Well, no, we haven't. Now, I happen to know there is a business plan because the last minister for the DOI showed it to me 2 or 3 days before she was sacked. And she seemed to think that the Treasury might be sympathetic to it, but then unfortunately the Treasury Minister was sacked. And now the two replacement ministers have the job. The Treasury Minister, when he was the DOI Minister, did absolutely nothing at all to put the horse trams back. And we know that because they're not back. He's been lobbied. I've lobbied him as Treasury Minister, had a very polite reply saying, "Oh yes, Charles, you make some very good points, but the DOI haven't put a plan in, it's not in the budget, you know, a business case is not an approved capital project, blah, blah, blah." And a reply he gave to someone else who was lobbying him, and that's come to me, is he said, "If I get re-elected and I am in a position of authority, I will make sure the horse trams go back to the sea terminal." What? If you're re-elected? We've got to wait for that. If you're in a position of authority then, you're in a position of authority now. You're the Treasury Minister. You've been the DOI Minister and you've done nothing. And the current DOI Minister, the last time he was DOI Minister, you couldn't make this up, could you? Well, you don't need to because it's real. He didn't do anything either. And we know this because there are no trams there. Let me just remind you that this year is the 40th anniversary of Tynwald putting in place the legislation to produce the ministerial government system. That's right, the government was divided into departments and every department has a minister who makes policy and can make decisions. And to help you do that, ministers, as you know, you have a little thing called a Mindeq. It's a word most people won't have heard of, a Mindeq. It's a nickname for the ministerial decision. And let me just remind you, if you've never read the Act, that a ministerial decision is made by the minister under Section 3(2) of the Government Departments Act 1987. Such decisions will be binding on the department. The minister is the department. And so even if you have officers that don't want to do this, or you have colleagues from Tynwald who don't want to do it, if you make the decision, it's binding. That's it. No further discussion. And you could make that decision because A, it's our heritage and it should be put back where you found it. B, we elected you to look after our heritage. C, Tynwald has voted on it so many times. And D, it's the right thing to do. So, honourable members, do you think that we're a little bit disappointed in you? Is the Pope a Catholic? And talking of that, we have been absolutely transfixed by the hours you have spent talking about the bishop's vote. We've been right on the edge of our pews with that one. And now that you've decided to get rid of the bishop's vote, there is a rather nasty rumour going around, and I don't know where it's come from. I don't know if it's come from the Archbishop of York. But the rumour is that you have now opened the doors to getting rid of the bishop on the Isle of Man altogether. That means no more diocese of Sodor and Man, and we'll probably be absorbed into somewhere like Carlisle. The Diocese of Sodor and Man goes back to 477. That is nearly 1,500 years we have had an unbroken tradition of bishops on the Isle of Man. This is the oldest diocese in the British Isles. Its existence predates Tynwald. It's the most incredible piece of heritage. And you have made arrangements to make it possible for it to cease. What do you think you're doing? And so, members, I have to ask you a rather pertinent question, given what's happened. How much more of our heritage are you going to trash before you finally stand down in July? Because your record so far is pretty impressive. Is it too much to ask that you just get on and do what you should have done years ago? And talking about asking, the interesting thing is that in the very near future, you are going to come to us to ask us something. You're going to ask us to re-elect you. What a charming idea. And please, don't any one of you dare put on your manifesto that you support Manx heritage, because we just won't believe you. Good luck.